Hey there, this is the second part of my ongoing 47-part series about why DOS gaming is better than gaming in the present day. I say present day because, as I said in the previous video, there are actually a lot of great games released from the mid-90s to mid-2000s that weren't DOS based at all. So don't think of this series as looking down on that period in history. There are some absolute classics from that time. I should know because I've played a lot of them. Today's topic is all about motivation. Like somehow mustering the motivation to release over 1,000 videos on the same topic, to beat YouTube's algorithm into submission. It boils down quite simply to this. Most of the time, if you're just doing the job for the money, you're not going to do it as well as if you do it for the passion. I can relate to this quite well, as there have been days in the past where the commitment to release 4 different random DOS game show videos has felt like a millstone around my neck. So some of them have inevitably been a bit phoned in, depending on how unremarkable the game is. There's only so much effort you can muster for your 15th Tetris clone after all. Furthermore, when someone is doing something while fueled by sheer passion, it's a lot more noticeable when it's surrounded by mediocrity and a by-the-numbers environment. Want an example? Henry Cavill's a good one. Until recently, he starred as Geralt of Rivia in the fantasy series The Witcher. I watched it and didn't really enjoy it. The design felt cheap, the acting largely made me shrug, and the writing didn't inspire me with any great confidence. I won't delve into the social media-fueled controversy behind it all, as quite frankly, I don't care. But as I sit on my fence, I can still point out how it was obvious that Cavill lived and breathed The Witcher, and was a massive fan of both the books and the game series. Probably the reason he took the role in the first place. And as a result, he was excellent, and stood out like a sore thumb, as you could tell he was really giving it his all, while a lot of the other cast members involved just saw it as another fantasy series. Now, this isn't the only way to stand out. Sometimes a company will have hired an individual that's just far better at their job than the other staff involved with the project. So you'll have a game with eye-popping visuals or a wonderful score, and decidedly drab everything else. These people are naturally gifted, and even their by-the-numbers, for-pay work can outshine the efforts of others. It can also happen when the same people care, or offer their services voluntarily. It happened to us on the TIE Fighter Total Conversion. A certain individual came in late in the project, and their professional-grade voice work was so much better than anything anyone else could muster. As an amateur sound designer, it was an utter pleasure to work with them. But even when the people involved weren't quite on that level, the passion for their project and the sheer effort they'll put in fueled by that can raise their standards to levels previously thought unimaginable. The stars will align, a small group of people will gel and motivate each other by making a really cool and creative project together. Take them out of that environment or force them to do something else, and you can't reasonably expect the same result. It's why when you look at the resumes of so many developers, you'll see their magnum opus and then it'll trail off with average game after average game, big budget or otherwise. They got their foot in the door, they made their statement, and now they've got to keep that door wedged open by helping to make something they're just not that into. Or perhaps they just got old. The grinding wheel of capitalism and its demand for infinite growth is at complete odds with the idea of a small team making what they want. And the brute force method that larger companies use to create assets and stories by chucking money at as many talented people as possible to make things happen, it just doesn't feel the same in the end product. It's one of the reasons why the indie scene flourished in the last decade and change. It was a direct response to a gaping void in the market brought about by these practices. So how does this relate to DOS gaming? Well, go take a look at the credits list of even some of the bigger DOS games out there. TIE Fighter had 66 people working on it. Warcraft 2 had 68. The really extravagant games had just over 100 people working on them, while the most famous DOS games of them all were made by very few people indeed. The most critically acclaimed DOS game, Doom, was created by 15 people total. The best-selling game that also came out on DOS, Tetris, has 2 credits. You get the idea. Compare that to Horizon Zero Dawn. It has 1,915 credits. Jedi Fallen Order has 1,531 credits, while Jedi Outcast from Raven back in the 2000s had a mere 167 people credited. The larger the teams, the harder it is to get them all singing from the same hymn sheet. And the more likely it is that you'll get someone just doing it for the money, not the passion. Gaming in the modern era has become like those bloated Hollywood blockbusters, right when they forgot the art of script writing, and assumed if they just had big enough names in the right places it was a license to print money. DOS gaming is just like indie gaming. A group of passionate individuals wanting to make the game they enjoy playing, ramping up each other's creativity and working excessively long hours because they wanted to make something cool, not because they were being whipped into doing so by taskmasters. Sure, companies like EA still existed back then, and certain developers were notorious for crunch time in the DOS era too, but the number of great games that came out just because some genius felt like doing it was far higher than it is now. There were 1,900 developers on Star Wars Squadrons, yet it was the TIE Fighter Total Conversion project that ended up being the better game. A mod with a total of about 10 people working on an old engine upgraded by 40 people, originally designed by a further 176 people for LucasArts over 20 years ago. When roughly 50 dedicated enthusiasts can improve a DOS game from the 90s so much that it outperforms the best that a huge studio with thousands of employees can muster, then it's time to think about both your motivations and hiring practices. And that's why DOS gaming is better, because as noted philosopher Randy Savage once put it, the cream always rises to the top. And amidst the hundreds of poor clones and school projects and bad ideas, there was a core group of about 1,000 games made out of love for the genre. They either created outright or pushed forward with their creative ideas, developed by the individuals I talked about in the previous video in the series, who were unique thanks to the circumstances of their upbringing and the time and place they were located. So while even now you can find geniuses hidden amidst the mire that is modern gaming, you'll never find quite as many as when DOS gaming was in full flow, owing both to who those people were and their motivations behind creating the wonderful games they left for us to enjoy.